A while ago, I was thinking about some of the old rumors from the 2000s and early 2010s. You know, your internet hoaxes and what have you. And I realized that, being a kid, I fell for a few of these, with some being more obviously fake than others. However, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back at these to see what I think of them now, to reminisce, and just to see if anyone else remembers any of these. Now, I know your favorite one, or the one you fell for, probably won't be on here. So if there's a popular 2000s era rumor that I might have forgotten or something, leave it in the comments. So let's just get started, shall we? Okay, so if you're at all familiar with Super Mario 64, you're also likely familiar with the L is Real statue in the castle courtyard. Now, Mario 64 has its own modern set of mysteries, in part thanks to that one popular Mario 64 iceberg, as well as some actually pretty impressive ROM hacks, with B3313 being an easy example. But let's set aside the original Mario 64 and talk about Mario 64 DS, the remake for, well, the DS. I don't hear nearly as much about this game compared to the original, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess it makes some sense. While I enjoy the minigames and the multiple characters, the controls ultimately aren't as good as the N64 original, and the camera is still garbage for some reason. I don't think either can really be considered the true version, because some people will try to argue that Mario 64 is actually the true version because it's the original and has better movement controls, whereas fans of the DS game will argue that it has more content, including 30 extra stars. I think they're both equally good, but for different reasons. In terms of modding though, Mario 64 easily eclipses its DS counterpart. Now all this plays into the strange rumor that is Waluigi in Super Mario 64 DS. Now when you heard that, I'm guessing you had one of three initial reactions. What on earth is that? Oh hey, I remember that. Or, this is a load of barnacles. So to quickly recap for those who aren't aware of this, let me explain what's going on here. In Super Mario 64 DS, you can play as one of four characters: Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi. However, you actually start off the game as Yoshi, and you have to unlock the respective doors of each character by fighting a boss. Then you unlock them in this room with four doors, with colors corresponding to each character. However, in this room where all the other character doors are, is this mysterious fourth white door. What does that lead to? Well, according to the rumor, it leads to Waluigi. This follows the typical formula of absurd secret characters that ranges from just complete the game by getting all 150 stars, to collect every single coin in the game while spinning in circles at 3 AM. Yeah, okay, not very believable, and at least that first portion is pretty easily disproven. That would be the start and end of this mystery, but someone made this. This is called Purple Prizes, a, for its time, very well done edit of Mario 64 DS screenshots to put Waluigi in the game. This is what really made this distinct from Luigi and Mario 64. Luigi and Mario 64 relied mainly on the star in the courtyard, and people thinking this blurry text said L is real, and the fact that, well, it's a Mario game. Surely it must have Luigi in it too. And I guess technically they weren't wrong since Luigi was found in the Giga Leak, but Waluigi was more convincing to my dumb brain in part due to Purple Prizes. I spent more time than I reasonably should have trying to find Waluigi in this game, and let me tell you just a few of the harebrained ideas people came up with to unlock Waluigi. Speaking of harebrained, one idea was that there was a way to crash into the peach-stained glass window by launching yourself from the cannon. Doing it just so will allow you to get into a sort of hallway behind it. Enter a door, and you'll be transported to a level much like the other ones where you unlock characters, so that you can fight the Rabbit King and unlock Waluigi. Another theory was this black box you can see in the file select screen. According to one of these theories, this was actually supposed to be a secret hint telling you that you need to fire there in order to enter a secret area. But yeah, also you'll get a 151st star for doing either of these. In case it wasn't obvious enough already, especially by this topic's inclusion in this video, Waluigi in Super Mario 64 DS was fake. It's unfortunate because upon first glance, especially to younger me, this seemed like it made sense. There were 4 doors. Why did the black box appear? Wario was in the game, so surely Waluigi must be somewhere. Mind you, I wasn't entirely familiar with Luigi in Mario 64, so had I known that, I probably would have been more quick to realize this was fake. It's still such a shame that Waluigi basically never makes appearances in mainline Mario games, 64 DS included. As for the rumor now, I think it's fine to look back on, and was probably one of the most detailed ones. I wouldn't fall for this one now.
That's very convincing.
But given the fact that purple prizes even exist, just goes to show how well done this was. In fact, I know that at least the file select black box was referenced in B3313, so I thought that was pretty cool. And this did get me interested in game glitches, such as some actual glitches in Super Mario 64 DS. There's even an entire article explaining how the Waluigi door was made, and how purple prizes was done. To keep it brief, it involved various levels of Photoshop skills and a custom 3D model. It was done as an April Fool's joke that simply got way out of hand. I also haven't even covered everything with the tons of Waluigi and Super Mario 64 DS rumors, like the Purple Rabbit, or other hoaxes that built on top of the original, such as the edits done by RCS2401. And of course, all of these old videos are tracked in 240p, though honestly I think that sort of adds to the charm now. But I think that's all for this topic, especially since there are other videos that go into this whole thing more in depth, and this is mainly just an overview.
Like carrots and peas.
Oh.
Iron give me vitamins.
Oh, they're good for you.
Now, before I begin this segment, which I guess also applies to the next one in a bit, I promise I'm not going to do the lost media thing where I make a show for 5-year-olds sound way more serious than it actually is. These just happen to be internet hoaxes that I heard about in a certain time frame. For crying out loud, for this one and the next one, I was maybe 10 when I heard about them for the first time. Now, this next one is honestly just really stupid, and even now I'm almost amazed I fell for it. Sort of. I don't remember where I even heard about this one, though I think I just happened upon it one day. Everyone knows Cookie Monster, right? The character from Sesame Street that loves to eat cookies. Well, for some reason, that started a very stupid rumor about how Cookie Monster was a bad influence because eating that many cookies is unhealthy. So instead, the creators of Sesame Street were going to turn him into Veggie Monster. Oh no. And of course, there were the totally real images of Veggie Monster, which looked like... Okay, look, I might have been really stupid. Also, for some reason, unlike other entries in here, I didn't fully buy this. The mock-ups looked pretty obviously fake, even to me at that time, but I did read some of the descriptions explaining that this was about to happen for real on Sesame Street. Apparently due to a bunch of parent complaints because Cookie Monster eats too many cookies and it's bad and unhealthy. The worst part is that the line of "because Cookie Monster eating so many cookies is a bad example" is a line I could have easily understood being used. In fact, now that I think about it, I wouldn't be surprised if that was ever tried in the future. So, in short, the images weren't really convincing. Most of them range from "that's a Cookie Monster recolor" to "angry eyes for no reason." But the actual reasoning for it seemed somewhat plausible. Despite the clearly fake mock-ups, due to that explanation of cookies are unhealthy, I was for a brief time convinced that they were going to replace Cookie Monster with Veggie Monster, or they were at the very least considering it. Now, why did I even care about this though? I hadn't watched Sesame Street for a while at that point, but honestly, I still really liked Cookie Monster, so I was a bit annoyed at the idea of him being turned into Veggie Monster. Now that was where this Veggie Monster segment was going to end, but apparently this goes a bit deeper than I thought, since even the creators and producers of Sesame Street mentioned regretting making Cookie Monster solely dedicated to cookies going as far back as the 80s, so this wasn't any sort of new thing. They also riffed on the Veggie Monster rumors on more than one occasion, including this really funny clip of David Rudman playing Cookie Monster, who announces to the world that he's going to give up cookies, including by using a cookie patch, which helps stop the cravings. He then eats a Brussels sprout before spitting it out, and rethinking his decision to change. Honestly, I think the whole segment is hilarious, so I suggest you go watch it. Though the weird thing is that I could only find this in two qualities. One was a static shot where one couldn't see much, while the other was very clearly filmed handheld. I will say that the fact that the creators and Cookie Monster's puppeteer played off of this was pretty funny. I just wish I had seen all these things back when the whole Veggie Monster thing was at its peak. Some people might argue that this one doesn't count because I didn't even fully fall for it, more as it was just somewhat convincing, but I don't know, I found this one interesting. If I had a nickel for every video I've had Barney the Dinosaur in, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. I doubt that Barney really needs an introduction, but in case you do, Barney was a TV show made for children starring a large purple dinosaur, where they do, something. Look, it's been so long since I've watched the show, and I was never hugely interested in it to begin with. I watched Barney only a handful of times when I was really little, so I couldn't give you a basic plot synopsis of the series even if I wanted to. The only other character's name I can even remember is BJ, and that's because
Bugs Bunny's birthday blowout, more like Bugs Bunny's birthday blowjob.
Otherwise, however, the name Barney in my mind has been completely supplanted by Barney from Half-Life. Even Barney parodies take up more space in my mind than the original show itself. So why do I mention Barney here anyway? Well, apparently there were Barney shows done as live events, and one day I heard that there was one where the actor for Barney either stubbed his toe or full-on tripped and fell and swore in front of everyone there. I read that some people had even seen video of this, but no one could ever find it, because wow, what a surprise, this one was fake. However, I found this one somewhat reasonable. I wouldn't have been surprised if there was an old recording of a live show out there where Barney face plants and swears. And hey, others had said they had seen it. There was also another similar thing which said that this actually happened during filming of an episode, and that it even made it to air but somehow didn't get noticed. Now that one's a whole lot less believable. The story of that live show also ranged from, oh, he swore under his breath but barely anyone noticed, to full on, he fell and swore really loudly. And I'm sorry, but the idea of Barney face planting and then swearing really loudly is actually hilarious to me. Also, here's a mock-up of what I really wanted to find when I heard about this Barney incident.
Fuck! 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 Oh!
And I'm just getting started on some of the crazy Barney rumors, like how because the actor for Barney was black, the KKK decided to ban their kids from watching. Oh, sorry, what's that? Oh, that's real. Yeah, because everyone's going to know that the talking purple dinosaur is actually played by a black guy. Yeah, that'll really show him. I guess sometimes reality can be stranger than fiction, huh? While making this video, I remembered that Lavender Town Syndrome existed. So to begin, let me say that I've barely played any Pokemon in my life. I feel like every single time I've tried getting into it, I would very quickly lose interest for one reason or another. I did watch the original season of the show at one point, but that was about the extent of my Pokemon knowledge and interest. However, this topic does require a bit of backstory. In the original Gen 1 Pokemon games, there's a place called Lavender Town with very eerie music. Now here's where the internet rumor begins. Part of this supposedly included high-pitched tones, which would apparently cause various issues for those who heard them. You know, headaches, seizures, paranoia, hospitalizations, etc. And only kids could hear these tones, so everyone else would think things were fine. There were also apparently eerie-looking spectrograms in the music as well, and it was a whole mess. Now, before we continue, we need to talk about the Pokemon episode Electric Soldier Porygon. For those still unaware, this was an episode of the original anime, which aired only in Japan. That's because there was a scene in the episode with bright flashing lights, which caused certain people watching to go into an epileptic seizure. Now I am technically showing the scene with this in it, however I'm showing it at 10% speed here. It already hurt my eyes as someone who doesn't even suffer from epilepsy, and already knew what I was about to see. But okay, aside from Pokemon, what does that have to do with anything I just mentioned? Well, my experience with all of this, especially not knowing much about Pokemon, as well as hearing about both of these at nearly the exact same time, caused me to sort of blend these two things together in my brain. One of the games caused bad health effects in kids, and one of the TV episodes caused it as well, just using visuals this time. So just so we're clear, the TV episode was 100% real. It actually caused real people to get hospitalized. The Lavender Town hidden frequencies and whatever, entirely fake. Some of this did seem plausible to me though. Aside from the fact that my brain merged these two things together, there was also the idea that I could have seen one of the game devs sneaking in a spectrogram image just for the fun of it, especially in the creepiest track of the entire game. Of course, now that I know that these were two separate things, it's simply the matter of Pokemon's troubled development didn't leave much time for things like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we put in high-pitched tones that mess with people's brains? While researching the Lavender Town Syndrome, I managed to find a link to... oh, darn it. Hang on a sec. Okay, there. I found a link to what seems to be the original forum post that started this whole mystery, basically detailing Lavender Town Syndrome cases throughout the late 90s in Japan. I also decided to go looking for the original lavender.wav file, which was apparently the thing that was sent around to get those scary looking spectrograms. I couldn't find it, though I did run across a video called staticmesh.wave, which I had never heard of, so what is that anyway? Alright, you know what? I think I'm done looking at this topic. I'm embarrassed to say, though, that I believed this one for a while, and it didn't help my lacking interest in Pokemon by being scared off like that. I sort of wonder if this happened to anyone else, or if it was just a perfect set of circumstances that I heard about this around the same time as that Pokemon episode, which was actually real. Well, either way, let's move on to the next segment. Although, say, does anyone else have a headache?
Him. He is him. Ah!
Does this one really need an introduction? Well, in case someone needs an introduction to Herobrine for some reason, this was basically a scary internet story about Notch, the creator of Minecraft, having a brother who was trapped in the code of Minecraft and would randomly haunt certain players. As a joke for a while in many patch notes for Minecraft updates, there would be a note saying, "Removed Herobrine." Now, with hindsight, I can tell that this was playing into the joke, but when I was younger, I kept wondering if Herobrine was really in Minecraft. No, I didn't think that the game was necessarily haunted, but since the patch notes kept saying Herobrine removed, I thought that Herobrine was almost like a virus inside the Minecraft code that couldn't ever fully be removed. So I figured that no matter how much they tried to get rid of him, there was a small chance I could randomly be jump scared by Herobrine out of nowhere. And yes, I saw the ways to spawn Herobrine, or the creepy tunnels illuminated by only dim redstone torches. I think unlike the other hoaxes and rumors in this video though, I was already a bit too old to fall for this. At least the spawning him portion. I didn't think there was an actual way to spawn him, or find a scary tunnel, and at most I only only ever thought he was somewhere between a glitch and an internal virus, almost like the shadowy entity from B3313. However, I know plenty of people who swore that Herobrine was real, and they either saw a video of a player encountering him or saw him directly. These were ones I also never really believed. Honestly, even though I never believed the haunting thing, and I doubted even the virus theory, it was still interesting back in the day, and I'd be remiss if I didn't include Herobrine somewhere in this video. Herobrine was everywhere back in the early 2010s, and it makes sense as to why. He's simple, but honestly iconic. Literally just a default player skin, but with entirely white eyes. In fact, I think in at least the original renditions of the Herobrine story, he didn't even attack the player or do anything malicious. Instead, he'd just be standing there, menacingly. He wasn't a literal screamer, didn't turn into a plush and jump out of your monitor or anything like that. I think that's helped Herobrine be remembered in a more interesting context compared to, the game is scary and evil and kills your mom in her sleep. That's not to say that scary and corrupted games can't work, but if you can't do it just right, you can quickly go from an NES Godzilla to a Sonic.exe. Hell, one could argue that even NES Godzilla stumbled a bit towards the end, but I'm going on a tangent again. Herobrine was never in your face, and I think that's what has helped him to endure so long. But you know what? There's one other thing I feel we should talk about. One other internet mystery that I feel we should discuss. I was actually going to mention this in the previous segment, but realized that this next thing deserves its own entire segment. So let's talk about Majora's Mask for a minute. It's the game that takes place almost immediately after Ocarina of Time. Well, sort of. And was also developed in something like a year, if I remember correctly. You play as young Link, who has to save the land of Termina this time, not Hyrule, from being crushed by a moon with an evil face which gave a bunch of people nightmares. You also only have 3 days to do this in. Again, sort of, since you can actually rewind time, losing a bunch of things in the process. Most people seem to say that Majora's Mask is at least on par with its predecessor Ocarina of Time, with some even saying that it's superior. A lot of people will argue that the story is more interesting and that the characters are more developed. But hey, since I have no clue when I'm going to talk about this game again, I'll just say this for it. I did not care for Majora's Mask. Yeah, I know, how could you even say that? It's one of the greatest games of all time. So give me some credit, I haven't played the game in a really long time. And the 3-day mechanic bothered me as a kid, which resulted in me never getting all that far into the game. Every single time I've considered playing it since, I end up getting sidetracked by some other game. And I still think that the 3-day system is a make or break for a lot of people. If you're okay with or even like that system, you'll really enjoy the game. But if you don't, you may end up turned away from it. But okay, that's my tangent about Majora's Mask done. Let's talk about Ben Drowned now. You should all know Ben Drowned, given that it's one of the most popular gaming creepypastas of all time. But again, in case you don't, Ben Drowned is the story of a haunted Majora's Mask cartridge that was once owned by someone named Ben who, well, drowned. Ben seems to have been represented by the creepy Link statue that can be spawned by playing the Elegy of Emptiness, except it just follows the player around throughout the game. There's that alongside a bunch of creepy elements and just general glitches in this weird haunted Majora's Mask cartridge.
What the fuck?
But wow, I really fell for this one? Yes, and for one big reason, the videos. I had certainly seen fake games before, but those were usually standalone screenshots or very blurry pictures of the TV screen, your Bigfoot types of things. But with Ben Drowned, these were full-blown videos of the game itself being played. Now, I was aware of ROM hacking at the time, but I had never seen anything this complex. It was rather impressive, and actually still is to a certain degree. It helped to keep the story rather compelling, and even somewhat believable, and is why Ben Drowned was something I fell for, including still being one of my favorite creepypastas of all time. In a sense. Okay, here's where I'll spoil something for all of you though, and skip ahead if you don't want Ben Drowned sort of ruined. So, Ben Drowned actually turned into a sort of ARG, which I never really followed. I only ever cared about the original story, and that's it. Well, as it turns out, this ARG was left on a permanent cliffhanger. The original creator of Ben Drowned got bored during 2020 for some reason, so he decided to finally wrap up Ben Drowned. There's actually a whole video I saw about this, which was where I originally heard about the continuation, and from what I saw, the continuation was fine. Very early AI faces, a story about random people getting shoved into N64 cartridges, a scary corporation taking people's memories or something like that. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of this sort of continuation, honestly. It's just a bit overly convoluted for what was originally Scary Evil Majora's Mask cartridge haunted by a kid that drowned, and ironically starts to tip the scales from what was originally an interesting and creative story into something that borders on messy or even downright silly. I guess it's good for those who cared about the ARG being finished, and it isn't the worst thing ever, but I guess having a near decade-long break for internet scary stories to advance in there didn't help it at all. If it had been planned like this from the very beginning, it probably could have worked. My point is that it's fine, but not great. But the original Ben Drowned was pretty good, and still holds up to this day. Alright, I think it's about time we wrap up this video. I honestly thought it was fun to cover some of the old myths and rumors from this era of the internet. I have to say that I almost feel bad for certain people in the modern day, where a lot of these will instead boil down to some AI-generated slop video being made showing scary SpongeBob or something. I get it that some of these weren't the highest quality, or some didn't even exist, but some of the things that did exist were actually interesting to look at. Things like Purple Prizes or Ben Drowned took some genuine effort to make, and I sometimes worry as to whether or not we'll get anything like that ever again. You know, these fun internet mysteries. I'm also interested to hear if anyone else had heard of some of these, or had found separate odd internet myths that I didn't end up covering in here. Maybe a few of those would be ones I'd heard of too, and I just don't remember right now. But hey, who knows, there might be a part 2 to this video. But that's all for now though. Thank you all for watching, and take care.
You can hear me before you see me. I got kids.